Um, Thank you for being here. We don't want to take up too much of your night, so we'll try to keep it short and just hit on kind of the main topics that we get a lot of questions about for buyers. So if you don't know me, my name is Samantha. Um, I'm a Colorado native. Outside of real estate, because I like to go hiking, spend a lot of time outdoors. Professionally, before real estate, I was a psychotherapist and worked with families. So I feel like there's a lot of crossover with really listening to clients and helping them reach their goals. And so it's fun that I get to use skills from my past career. And then my mom, Staci, has helped me really get started in this career.
Hi, I am Staci Stroh. I've been with Coldwell Banker 23 years, and in some form or fashion, even before that, I was involved in real estate. So this is what I have always done. I am a native of not only Colorado, but Golden. I've never moved far from home, and that I feel like kind of gives me a nice perspective when dealing with people and being able to talk about all the different neighborhoods and places they should be and things like that. And I've worked quite a bit with investment and rentals. And so always my goal is to help my clients find something that is a good investment and a long-term wise decision. And I enjoy doing what I do.
Right. And then tonight we also have Rod. He's with Guaranteed Rate Affinity, one of Coldwell Banker's preferred lenders. So Rod, if you want to introduce yourself, then we'll get into the presentation.
Sure. No, and I'm grateful to be here. I know, well, I've been, I guess, in the lending side for, I think, my 24th year now. And, honored to be a part of this. I obviously know both of you guys, and I know Staci, you've got a great reputation, both of you do, in the Coldwell Banker office. So I'm grateful to be a part of it. I have a few things we can chat about, but certainly I'm available because some of this can be very personal. So if appropriate, I'm certainly available after this call as a contact to talk more about somebody's situation.
Okay, thank you. So we'll get into it, and then we can definitely, feel free, write down any questions that might come up, and we'll save time at the end. We can do kind of a question and answer, but just so we don't maybe go down some rabbit holes, we'll go through the slides first and then questions at the end. So we get asked this question daily: how's the market? So we heard a quote not long ago that we really liked. The market isn't good. The market isn't bad. It just is what it is. Because it could change depending on who you ask within the same hour. So the past couple of years, we had historically low rates, I'm sure, as you know, and so that caused a buying frenzy, and it wasn't healthy or sustainable. Now buyers have a little bit more breathing room. Inventory is still low and demand is still high, so it is still a seller's market. So particularly under the 500,000 range, the average days on market right now is 8 days. So it is still fast, but buyers are seeing about 13 homes before they go under contract on a home. So they are taking a little bit more time and seeing what's out there.
So another question we get asked literally daily, is this a good time to buy? My answer to that always is, yeah, it is always a good time to buy. I prefer to try and help guide and teach my clients that it isn't the market that's determining whether it's a good time to buy. The question really should be, is it your time to buy? Do you have some job security? Do you have a little money saved? Do you have a plan? If you are paying for the roof over your head in any way, you are in the market and you're paying a mortgage. It just may not be your mortgage. And so it is always a good time to buy. I personally am really excited about the market right now. It's such a nice, refreshing time to feel that it's getting a little bit back to what normal should be. We've been saying for probably 6 or 7 years that the market couldn't last the way it was, and finally we're back to some normalcy. And what I mean by that is buyers have a minute to think about it. They can compare, they can hopefully be in a neighborhood they wanted to be in, and they're not having to buy things sight unseen and as is and waive inspections and things like that. And I think it's still a good time to be a seller. People aren't having to have the stress of worrying about 100 folks coming through the house in an hour. So to me, it's an exciting, excellent time to buy. And regardless of the market, good, bad, 2008 or 9 or 2023, if it's your time to buy, it's a good time to buy.
Okay, so probably the question we get asked most, how do I get a mortgage, or how much money do I really need? So we let you take over, Rod, and I guess just let me know when to go to the next slide.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of options here. So I guess, yeah, first-time home buyers, and this isn't necessarily just for first-time home buyers, depending on someone's situation, but you can go ahead and go to the next slide here. I'll kind of keep up with that.
Okay.
Well, and again, I don't want this too much to be, I guess I want to have some just an overview. It's not here about trying to sell me or our organization, but these are important pieces that I feel are tied, and I'll quickly, the in-house underwriting really just means we control that loan all the way through. So really part of that process is it just one-on-one, everybody's case is a little different, kind of getting a template or a starting point, understanding when we look at a mortgage, and I might go a little off script here, kind of the next ones, but factors that a lender looks at is income, gross income, we get to qualify a borrower, and whether there's one borrower or two borrowers on an application. We look at credit. Credit's not necessarily a make or break, but no secrets when we look at credit. I mean, the better credit scores can allow for better types of financing. Even if somebody is getting into a loan today, you're not having to hold that loan forever. So as credit scores go up, there could be some adjustments there they could do to better. We mentioned interest rates, and I can dabble. Rates are a little on the higher. We're seeing them creep better. My biggest fear for some borrowers is when rates drop back down, which they're targeted to in the 8 to 18 month window, if we follow forecasts, we're getting a lot of more buyers, which is exciting in the market. But also it means we potentially might be competing a little bit. So if somebody's in a position to do it now with the environment we're in, I agree with what you said, Staci. I think it's always a good time. A history of real estate, there's never been a bad time. If you're in there going to own a home, you're developing equity rather than making equity for somebody else. But we look at credit scores, and then we look at down payment. There's many options, whether it's borrower's own money, gift options. There's assistance programs out there. Those are all, ways to get into a house. Most important to me, I think, is trying to match that up to a borrower's comfort zone, meaning a lot of times somebody, which is a good problem, but can qualify for more of a house payment than we even want. And I think understanding a house payment, there's taxes, there's insurance, there's different variables, HOAs sometimes. So we want to look at that whole package when we come up with that house payment. And the goal is to keep us as close to somebody's budget. We don't want to make anyone house poor. Different types of loans that we look at. The FHA, there's pros and cons to FHA versus conventional. Veterans, obviously, we have that VA loan, which is a wonderful loan that they've earned. Renovation loans, again, just touch on it, but it, in so many words, allows when we find a house that maybe is not perfect, a simple answer is kind of, let's say we wanted to redo the kitchen, or it could be landscaping, it could be finish a basement. There are ways to build all of that into that financing structure rather than having to close on a loan and then coming up with a lot of that money out of pocket. And please feel free, if there's a question, to jump in here. You can go ahead and, I guess, kind of go to the next one maybe. Digital mortgage, this is again kind of a good starting point from where we're at. No weird commitment or cost, just kind of getting, for me, an understanding of a borrower's circumstance. We, have a basic link, kind of fill it in. It just takes a few minutes. Um, Gives me an idea. I really don't normally ask for any kind of paperwork at that point. I want to get that file prepped and then do a follow-up call, allow to answer questions and give me an opportunity. Maybe I have questions or just confirming things. The last thing we need is, any kind of surprise. So we were ahead of the game on this one, but, and it says in just 20 minutes. The reality is it takes probably less than 10 minutes. And again, I see here, our goal is to get somebody as strong position as possible. And that's working with, Staci and Sam, is when we have that file ready to go, we want to know we're good and we can generate an approval letter. We can even, which isn't on there, but we can even take it a step further and actually have a file underwritten. What that means is everything, income, assets, whatever the structure is, kind of having that completely underwritten, meaning it's been verified, it's all done. It puts a borrower in the best position, when you're making an offer, a conversation that we can assure that seller that this file is going to be completely reviewed, rather than just, due respect when I say this, but kind of just taking the information that a borrower provides and running with it. Everything's been verified, so it puts us in a real good spot. But that pre-approval letter is important because when an offer is made by an agent, we want to know that that letter is supporting it, that just is, again, telling that seller we're ready to go. I think that kind of covers that piece to it. So we could look, and this is kind of what I just mentioned, the pre-qualification, which most people do when they're going through that process, is really filling in the blanks. Nothing is truly verified. There's nothing wrong with it. And as long as you can back up, again, and due respect when I say that, back up what a borrower is giving us as far as information, then yeah, based on those variables, we're pre-qualified. The full pre-approval, which is the strongest position, is actually having pay stubs verified or W-2s. There's not a ton of information. A lot of people get a little, I think, concerned they're going to be interrogated. It depends on somebody's circumstances, but really it's not a lot of paperwork. Probably most things that you'd think would be common sense, such as 30 days worth of pay stubs, most recent or 2022 W-2. If we are putting down payment money, we want to verify where that money's coming from, and really kind of shopping for homeowners insurance. So that kind of covers that. Lenders. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the difference. Here's a quick overview of down payment options, the VA, if there's veterans on the call, zero down options. There's as little as 3% down with conventional, which is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. That's really the only difference. And I know I'm doing a quick overview. Which direction we go with the type of loan, there's many variables, and that's sometimes down payments, sometimes credit scores. FHA is a very common first-time homeowner purchase program, but and it's 3.5% down. Jumbo probably is not really relevant for normal if we're dealing with the first-time home buyer. Those are loan amounts that are above 787,000. So I think our main focus would typically be on the FHA or the Fannie and Freddie options. But the 3% can be borrower's own money. It can also be a gift. But if you put it in perspective, I get a lot of time people are calling me saying, well, we haven't saved up for our 20% down. And 20% down is wonderful if you've got it. Sometimes it may or may not make sense to use all that money, depending on a circumstance. Again, from where I'm at, the last thing I want to do is spend every penny a borrower has to get them into a home. So it's kind of evaluating what that situation looks like and what do we have to work with.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that, Rob, because I think a lot of times we hear like, oh, do I need 20% down? And
Right.
That's kind of a common,
That's an assumption.
yeah, and it's not true.
Yeah, if you talk to our grandparents, that was 20% down. and sometimes it's important to hold back. But yeah, that's something a lot of people I don't think understand, that you can get in for very little. And then again, putting your money to work for you rather than sitting in a checking or savings account. A quick analogy that I think is a perspective of that is, and I'll just use some random examples, but let's just say we put 3% down on a $300,000 house. It's $9,000. Well, there is some closing costs, and again, I don't want to necessarily go too in depth on it. There's ways to handle closing costs, and the market we're in now is, as Staci and Sam can probably vouch for, not always, but if a house has been sitting a little longer and you've got sellers that are eager, they may offer a concession to maybe pitch in towards our closing costs. But if I assume absolute very conservative answer, let's say that closing costs, and again, they're usually less, but easy math for me, let's say it's 2%. So in that example of a $300,000 purchase, 3% is 9,000. You had 2% for closing costs, let's say $6,000. We're looking at investing $15,000 in a $300,000 home. Well, as I think Staci and Sam can probably vouch, a pretty conservative number for Colorado on home values and what they appreciate annually. If you go back to about 1991, when they really started tracking Colorado as a metropolitan city, Colorado's averaged almost 7% annual, but let's be ultra conservative and say 5%. So that $300,000 asset, which again, this is an asset, this is an investment into your future. That asset at 300, in theory, next year should be worth 315. So you've technically gained 15,000 in equity. You invested, ironically, 15,000 in that example, and you recouped that investment, or invested 15 and made 15 at 12 months later. I don't know too many examples where you can invest $15,000 in the stock market or any type of investment and get another 15,000 back as a return on your investment. That's literally 100% return on your money. I didn't plan that to 15 and 15, but that's what we really have to have the mindset. There's no difference in investing in a home than investing in a 401k or any other thing that's long-term benefit to you.
Right. Can I jump in for just a quick comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's kind of along the lines that I was talking about, being excited about the market again. This is the first time in I don't know how long where we can potentially ask the seller to pay something. We've come out of a time where there was just no way that a seller was going to pay any contribution to closing costs or down payment. So that's awesome. And then even though we hear reports of, you know, the sky's falling type news regarding real estate, I just read a report that at this time last year, from the end of February until now, we still are up about 7.5%, and inventory is still low. So even though there's been negative news, people have still made money. You're going to have your natural appreciation, so it's your biggest savings account, your home, and then on top of that, you'll have your principal reduction that you're doing by paying your mortgage rather than rent. So it's a win-win.
In addition to that, which a lot of people don't, it's a bonus, but your interest that you pay on that mortgage creates a reduction in taxable income. So, you know, a good guesstimate, I'm not supposed to advise on that, but that if somebody hypothetically, which on a 300,000 is easily, let's say you paid 10,000 in interest of the year, and let's just say you're at 25 or 30% tax bracket, the simple way to look at that is that about 3,000 in reduction of taxable income, that comes right off of your top. So if you did your tax returns last year and let's say it was perfect, you didn't owe any money or get any money back, you throw that home in this example, now everything remaining the same, you're going to see a refund on those taxes of $3,000 as a refund. So a lot of people don't build that in too, and that's an additional, obviously, benefit to home ownership.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk to the
Yeah, I
Chapa?
can. Yeah, and again, this is more of a personal thing, but just in general, when you think of CHAP is a very popular down payment assistance in Colorado. I believe it's Colorado Housing Financing Authority, but um, it basically is going to, it doesn't cover everything. There are ways to get in, but it can provide, let's say, 4% to a borrower. There are certain guideline restrictions, credit scores, and there are some income restrictions, but they're relatively fair. But it allows to get 4%. So if you think of a FHA, for example, where it's 3.5% down, it's covering that down payment. So then it puts a borrower in a position where they may need to come up with a little of those closing costs. Let's just say, again, I'll just keep it simple, that we may just need roughly 2%, more likely less, but 2% of our own money to get into that home. So the 3,000 or 300,000 example, roughly 2% is $6,000. So somebody can literally get into a home for $6,000. Now, going back to what we were just talking about, if you can negotiate it's the right property, the right fit, and the seller is willing to help us with closing costs, in theory, you could get in. And we just had one last month where we got into that home literally with no money out of pocket. And ironically, it was a friend of my son's, and it was like a no-brainer for him. And again, so it can work out, but this is just a way to help with, as a program, with that down payment money. If that's our only option and it's a way to do it, it's certainly, no secret, better than renting. It's a way to get into the house and start taking advantage of all the benefits once again. Yeah, and here's an example. It says up to 3. I think they'll allow us now to go up to 4. I didn't catch that when I sent that over, but point would be is it's getting you in and covering that down payment. And yeah, I guess on the lower one, typically you're going to be looking at the lower of the two, the 4% example. And then again, there's no payments made on that borrowed money, if you will. They call it a grant, but when you go to sell the house at that point in time, it'll be part of what's paid off. So eventually it's paid off, but it's just a kind of that gap or that bridge to help somebody get in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Rod.
It's a wonderful program. There's all sorts of options. And I think the key last thought from my end is nothing to be, at least from my end, there's nothing I haven't seen. And really my goal, there is no timeline, is to really get somebody in a direction. If that's your goal, let's just start planning, whether it's, next month or a year from now. If there's things we need to work on, really that's where I thrive. There's nothing more gratifying than helping somebody, whatever that timeline is. It's the best part of what I do.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if you guys have questions about anything that Rod said, feel free. You can ask at the end, but then Rod's information is down at the bottom too. So you can
And I just noticed that my email is GRA is in Apple, GRA rate. The cell phone number, the cell phone's correct. But just in case somebody wanted to reach out and just have a one-on-one.
That's right there. Yep. Okay. So look at that one.
Oh yeah, that's the one. That's
okay.
The one. And obviously that picture, that was before the accident.
All right, here's another question that I get asked all the time. What's the best place to live? Well, people ask me that, I think, more than average because I've always lived here. But really, that's such a personal thing. One bit of reassurance that I can offer to you is that you will add in your personal criteria. You're going to go through and tell us things like what commute is okay with you, if there's an area that's familiar and comfortable, if we need to worry about schools, daycares, the list goes on and on of why you would choose a location. But then on top of that, it's just, I think with some time and experience and, you know, those types of things that we can offer, I can help you determine not whether it's a good place to live, but along equally important is it a good place to invest? So I always look at that for my clients. If they say they're going to move in 3 years, or if they say we're going to live here 30 years, I always have to ask the question, but what if? So I really do like to guide. Of course, I can't choose, and nor do I want to, but guide you as to if it's a good location. This is a big step, a big investment. An example of that is, you know, you may find this house that's beautiful cosmetically, but it backs up to the local landfill and you're going to move in 2 years. Well, I will have to, you know, throw all the information out there to say, if you have to move, can we sell it? And very importantly, when I'm working with buyers, is I want to help you build your wealth. So will it appreciate? So that's something that we will look at together as a whole picture. Is it where you can feel comfortable and feel at home? And right alongside that is important. If you need to move and want to move in a shorter amount of time, will you have made some money to be able to move on to your next home? And is there something about that home that will make it appealing to the next buyer? Just, you know, it's some things that we look at together. And another reason that I think this is an exciting time, you have more time on to your advantage right now to be able to look at those things, rather than in the last couple of years where I've had a lot of buyers who bought out of panic to just find a home and get under contract, and maybe it wasn't the ideal scenario. So another
And now we're
another
wanting
time,
to move.
right? And another reason this is a good, exciting time to be a buyer.
Mhm. Okay, how long before my lease ends should I start looking? So if you are in a lease right now, I would say first and foremost, start talking with a lender as soon as possible. I would say maybe within 6 months of your lease ending to see, you know, do you need to do a little bit of work on your credit? Do you need to save a little more, pay off some debt, whatever it may be? But I think it's never too early to start that conversation with a lender. And then with us too, so you can start kind of keeping an eye on the market, start narrowing down where you might want to be, what's important to you, and then work backwards a little bit from when your lease ends. Um, I would say we would start out looking 2 months before your lease ends. It could take 2 weeks or it could take a month to get under contract on a house. And then typically, once under contract, we would close within 30 days. It could be a lot shorter, or it could be a little more extended than the 30 days, just depending on your needs, the seller needs. But plan on being out pre-approved, looking at homes 2 months before your lease ends. And then also it wouldn't hurt to talk with your landlord to see if there is any flexibility. If you needed a little more time, could you go month to month? And what would that look like? Would your rent go way up if you went month to month? Or if you found a house your first day out looking and needed to close quickly, could you end your lease sooner without a large penalty? And, you know, depending what they say, get that in writing. So you don't end up having to pay down the road. But I think having some flexibility is always best if possible.
You know, Sam, on that with timing, I think that's very important. Just so everyone knows, is the way a mortgage works. If you close at the end of a month, let's say the end of March, you're going to not have a house payment in April. Your first house payment would come due May 1st. Or if to stretch it a little further, is if you close the first part of a month, if it's again to accommodate a seller, maybe to get that house. If you close at the first part of March, you would, in theory, and there's a little difference on the interest collected, but if you close the early part of a month, you're still skipping that month and the next month first payment. So early part of March, you'd skip no payment in March. You'd also skip April, first payment come due May. The goal, again, knowing the flexibility, but trying to avoid having to pay rent and a mortgage maybe in that first month to not double dip.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that up.
Okay, what should I expect during the process? So we'll go through this kind of quickly, because once you are in the process going through all this, we explain it in more detail. So we'll just go kind of broad here. So when you are ready to get started, first choose your realtor. And then after that, sign any necessary documents so we can begin working together. There are a few different disclosures that we need signed, and of course we'll go into detail of those when the time comes, but just kind of explains our duties to you, kind of expectations, things like that. And then work with a lender to get pre-approved and start that loan application. And then once you have the pre-approval letter, send that to us. And then verify with the lender what those closing costs will be, because you don't want to know or wait until you're under contract on something of, how much you really need. And then have earnest money readily available. We'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about earnest money, but that is money you will need as soon as you're under contract on a home. So make sure you have that in your bank account ready to go. And then we will discuss and finalize your search criteria, and then time for showings. And then when you get time, you think you are ready to make an offer on something, I talk a lot with the listing agent on the house to kind of know what kind of offer we need to make to get it accepted. I'm in conversation with the lender to see how we need to structure the loan or the offer, and then also looking at comps in the neighborhood to see, if we offer this price, are we confident that it will appraise for that, things like that, and then working and negotiating hard to get your offer accepted. Okay, so you made an offer and it's accepted. Now what? So this is based on a 40-day closing. So again, the days can change, but we just wanted to use this as an example.
Just a starting point. Most likely it would be less than 40, but this gives you an idea of what's going on during that whole process from the time we contract until the time we close. You'll notice some of the things are in red. Those will be things that you will be actively working on, kind of your homework during the process. And there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes from contract to closing that the lender will be doing, the title company will be involved, and of course we'll be doing, and we will be doing some things together. So right away, when you get under contract, within 24 hours or so, approximately, your earnest money will be due. In this day and age, it is preferable to just wire it in, but a check can be delivered to the title company. You want to finalize any of your mortgage application. Ideally, you've been working on this while we've been out looking and things, and hopefully, mainly it's probably just waiting for an address to be put in there, and your lender will work with you through this process, probably contacting you multiple times a week and still asking for documents right until closing. But ideally, as soon as we're under contract, you will have the majority of that application done. And then just kind of a note to remember, don't get excited that you're going to get this house and go buy furniture. Don't make any big purchases or unusual purchases. We don't want you to do anything to affect your credit or debt to income ratio in anticipation of your loan closing.
Mm-hmm. And then around day 2 to 3, we will provide you with a couple of great inspector referrals. Of course, you can use anyone you want if you know someone already, but we will give you some contact information for inspectors that we know and trust and have used. And then we will also provide you with some different home warranty options, so you can start looking over those. Again, that's something that's optional to you, but is beneficial for buyers. And there's different companies and different kind of tiers of warranties that you can get. And so we will provide that for you. And then you will review those inspectors, or research your own inspectors and choose someone that you are comfortable with, and has a schedule that will work with your schedule, because you will want to be at the inspection for at least a portion of it. You don't need to be there for all of it, but the inspector will go through the report with you, kind of point out things in the house. So you do want to be there. And we always recommend a general home inspection, a radon test, and a sewer scope. Again, it's up to you what you want to do with that, but that's what we recommend. For the general inspection, plan on about $400 to $600 for that. Sewer scope, 100 to 150 probably, and then a radon test, 100 to 130. So you can kind of budget for that and know what to expect, and that's something that you will have to pay for either right then on the spot with the inspector, or maybe even before they come out. And then continue giving lender all necessary documents as soon as it's requested.
During that time as well, your title work will be coming in. We'll be reviewing it. The lenders, underwriters, all are reviewing that too. There's a lot of aspects we won't go into right now, but just so you get a little bit of an idea of what's going on, we're checking to make sure no one has a right to the home that we didn't know about, that there's no liens or encumbrances on that title, things like that. The HOA documents will go through to make sure they're in good financial standing. And then also you'll have the right to look at all of their rules and regulations, things like that. Make sure that there's nothing in there that you just can't live with. For example, if no pets were allowed or something like that. One other note I just wanted to make about the inspection. It's the inspector's job, keep in mind, to just tear the place apart. They are doing that inspection to prevent anything from being wrong with the home. They're there to protect you and your investment. So those reports can often look very overwhelming and very scary. And that's why we do always recommend, if you are at all able, to at least come for part of it. It eases that fear a bit to talk with the inspector one-on-one and realize what he's really worried about and what is just language that has to be put in there for everyone's protection. And just if for some reason it happens once in a while where a buyer can't be there, we always attend at least the wrap up of it, so we can do that very thing and talk to the inspector and get his true feelings and any recommendations he may have if we need further investigation of something that he's not an expert in, such as the HVAC system or structural.
Okay, so going into day 7 to 9, review the inspection report. So that is a lot of it. We'll both look at that, and if there is further inspection that needs to be done, do that during this time also. And then get any bids for necessary repairs. So if there are things that we know right away, start getting estimates for those, so we know that going into the inspection objection, which we'll go into the next one.
Right. So there is a date. And again, at the beginning of all this, we'll go through the contract in depth with you and explain all the dates and deadlines. But there is a deadline in the contract, the inspection objection. And that's where we ask for any necessary repairs. We really don't want to come back with a long laundry list of silly items and maybe ruin the deal and cause bad feelings so that the rest of the transaction doesn't go smoothly. It's more to ask for necessary items, major defects, that type of thing. And during this whole process, again, behind the scenes, we as the agents are communicating and negotiating on your behalf even before this document's prepared. Many times we're the ones out there getting the estimates, but we're also negotiating strongly on your behalf to get as much of it taken care of as possible for you. When it comes to the resolution, which is another deadline in the contract, that can go several ways. And again, that negotiating period in between is key. They can say yes, they can say no, they can say, we'll credit this amount, we'll fix this amount. There's all sorts of scenarios and mix and match ways that can come out for us. And again, our goal is to get as much of it taken care of either actual work completed or credits for you as possible, so that you are going into the home ideally as stress-free as possible with these things taken care of.
Okay. Day 14 or sooner, get a couple of insurance quotes and tell your lender who you will be using. They'll prompt you to do that too. So maybe sooner than that. Then do you want to do day 14?
Sure. The next step that would happen is that if the lender has not already collected it, by this time they will probably ask you for payment for that appraisal. You don't need to go to the appraisal. That's something that's ordered by the lender. It's the appraisal is not the inspection, it's the appraiser's opinion of value. So it's completely different. There's always a lot of confusion on that. And again, it can go several different ways, but during that time period, we're waiting for that to happen and waiting for that value to come back. It can come back, there's different scenarios. It can come back ideally at value and we all just move on. If it comes in over value, then you're walking in to a new home with equity already. The seller doesn't need to know about that. A lot of people have the misconception that they have to come up in price. That's not the case either. You're just walking in with unexpected value more than your contract value. The other way that it can go is it can come in below your contract price, which time we're again negotiating behind the scenes. It can either, there's several ways that can go. There's a lot of contract details that go along with that we'll explain at that time. But just in short, it can either terminate the contract if necessary. You can either bring more money to close, or the seller can come down in price, or we can compromise in the middle.
Okay, so day 21 to 28, so getting closer to closing, we will verify any inspection items that we agreed upon are completed and then collect receipts for that. You know, what is the evidence that that stuff was done? And then we will schedule the walkthrough and closing. And then for the closing, plan on you know, you will have to be there in person most of the time to sign documents. And it is always during business hours. So if you kind of have a tight work schedule or limited time off, start planning ahead for a time when you can, you know, slip away for a short time to close on your home.
And just a quick note on that, if you know for some reason you are going to be called away to work, or you're in the military, or you're getting married. I had this happen a few months ago and they forgot to tell me when their honeymoon was, and we had a closing scheduled. It's not the end of the world, but if you have any conflicts, let us know well in advance so we can either amend the closing date, or there are possibilities of doing it virtually. We can set up notaries. There are ways around that. Just don't forget to tell us if you won't be in town.
Yeah.
And then if you are going to be in town, please also remember to bring your ID to closing. That's another thing that people sometimes forget now, since things are very digital, but you do need to bring an ID.
And then day 30 to 35, have your down payment and cash to close amount ready to be wired. So make sure it's in an account somewhere. You know, it's not tucked away in your, I forgot what I was going to say, in the
mattress.
yeah.
Tucked away in the mattress.
But also somewhere where, you know, it's in your bank account where you can get to. It's not with your financial planner still.
Sure. So at this time, you're going to receive the clear to close from the lender. That means underwriting has let them know that we are ready to go. We will be receiving, the agents will receive your settlement sheet to look over. And that's the statement of all of your fees. Every once in a while, there's a fee in there that may need to be taken out that we're going to talk to the title company about, that you shouldn't have to pay. Things like that, just making sure that it all looks like what you were expecting. And you'll get the instructions at that time how to wire and the amount needed to close from the lender. You'll want to complete that wire transfer before the day of closing so that it's there when we're sitting down. So keep that in mind too.
All right, and then right before closing, so we'll say day 39, we'll do the final walkthrough just to make sure that everything is the way that it was before. And again, check and make sure those inspection items have been completed. And then we will provide instructions to you to get utilities transferred. You can schedule that ahead of time. So you can, that day, schedule it for, closing is on Thursday. You can have it so utilities will start that day of closing. And then on closing day, arrive on time, sign your documents, get your keys. Usually you will get possession that day. There are some other situations that we can talk to if they arise, but plan on getting possession of your home that day and move in. Okay, so what is a bidding war, and does this have to be intimidating?
So everyone has heard in the news for the last several years about bidding wars. I don't even like to refer to it like that anymore, because it is intimidating. And I think the best way to look at that, and they still are happening, we've seen them happen this week, in fact, is look at it more as a multiple offer situation. Have it already in your mind that there's only one house and multiple buyers, and you may not get it. It's our job to do the best we can to write the strongest contract, to use a lot of tips and tricks and things that we've learned with experience that can make it the strongest offer that seller may receive. And then, of course, working with the lender, they've got a lot of the things that we can work in there and way we can structure that contract to be beneficial to you. But the short answer I give everybody on how to write the best offer or how to deal with the perceived bidding war, I feel like it's not as scary or as intimidating if my clients, if it's the home you love, and if you're going to be upset if you don't get it, then we go in with your best offer that you're willing and able to make. And you come in with that, we write it the strongest that we can write, which includes things like tight deadlines and other things like that that are very favorable to the seller when they're looking at these offers. If we've done that and you happen to not get that home, then I feel like it's just we've given it our best shot and there's no regrets. The worst thing is when people go in and they know they want and they love that home and they're going to be upset if they don't get it, and yet they could have gone 5,000 higher and they decided not to. Then that's when they're upset, and that's when it starts becoming more of the bidding war thing. Should we have done this? Should we have done that? Just if it's the home that you want, let's just write what you're willing and able to do. And if you don't get it, know that there's something better in store, and we move on to the next one. And again, I just have to say this is a better and exciting time than it has been, because months ago you may have been up against 40 offers. My hardest one was 43 offers within 2 hours. That's not the case right now. It's a great time to be buying. And if you are up against another offer and you don't get it, there will be another home.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next step. So I think just you figure out what your timeline is, what you need to do to be ready, and then talk with us, talk with the lender. But I think just staying in communication, even if it's not for another year, just staying in touch with us, because what we know and what we see every day is different than what's on the news. We know that the sky is not falling, and there are a lot of great opportunities.
Right. And please, just even whether you're going to buy in the next couple of months or the next couple of years, please think of us as your resource, as an extension of what you need to know to move on to the next phase of your life. And you can rely on us for information at any time rather than trying to decipher what you're hearing in the media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of our presentation. So we can open it up to questions if there are any. So feel free to unmute if you have questions. If you don't, that's okay too. If you want to reach out to us personally, you can.
And
Or
thank-
Rod, if you had anything else to add.
No, I think you guys were very thorough. I'm able to get on a few of these every month, and I think you covered it. I think the key is um, when you look at that, it was interesting to see your 40-day window. There's a lot going on. That's why
right.
it is vital to have seasoned agents, and I'm not just saying that because you guys are on the call here, but we're your partners through this whole process. So our goal, a lot of those things are kind of handled for everybody, and that's why it's really important to have good representation and a good team to go into it.
Mhm.
And
And
it's not.
I meant to say too, that's why it's also so important to work with an agent and lender who communicate and work well together, because there is so much going on behind the scenes, and
Yeah,
we need to talk.
It's a team
Yeah.
effort. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally is. And if it's your dream, let's start the process. That's all I said. There's nothing to be, if you don't go in and do it, and I get that a lot, where once we get going, it's, oh, this wasn't near as bad as I was
Right.
thinking. So my role is to educate and to prepare. And once we're ready, then obviously get you guys involved, and we just try to find a good fit. I kind of on the sidelines until I'm needed.
Mhm.
Well, thanks everybody for taking time out of your evening.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so if there's no
I guess
questions.
we'll say goodbye, and if anybody has anything, you can call us directly.
I
Thanks.
have one question.
Hi,
Yes.
Shelley.
Hi. Will earnest money always be 5,000 or does it fluctuate?
No, it fluctuates, and that's a really good question. It fluctuates for a couple of reasons. Just customarily, and I always hate to use that word, but it's based on a percentage of the home price.
Okay.
So a lot of times people used to say 1%, but that's not really the case. For example, on a $500,000 home, I typically see more in the range of 10 to 20,000. It's something that the seller and the listing agent discuss. It's really truly up to the seller, and it's in their listing contract. And they put that in the MLS that way. So we know what they're asking for.
Okay.
Sometimes if you've got a really nervous seller, they're going to ask for more. And again, it's a blank in the contract. On the flip side of that, the seller may have a number in mind, but it's a negotiable item too.
Okay.
So,
I
we
was just
say they're asking
asking.
for 20 and the buyer has 5 on hand. We may
Yeah.
put it in the contract that way, or we can do a promissory.
And that's a credit, obviously, that's applied, Shelley, to the total, whatever. If we're expecting we're going to be bringing 10 grand as part of the deal, and you've got 5 into it at the end, if those were the real numbers, you'd be expected to bring 5,000 remaining. So that credit and that money is protected all the way through the transaction.
Okay. I was just asking for my daughter. They're starting to save and just kind of to know how much maybe they need to have set aside. So
Right.
yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah, and don't let that deter them. If they've got something, it is a negotiable item in the contract.
Okay. Yeah, I just told her to start saving, and she said she was definitely wanting to use you or Sam, when it comes time. And they were going to do it this year and then decided to wait one more year just to kind of be more prepared. So
Yeah.
this